Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, love going through old comic book films. We've often done this. We call it We
Oh,
Love Them, You Hate Them. We've had about five or six of these. I don't know if
yeah,
the one we're going to talk about today goes into hate them for most people, but I do think it goes into forgotten or kind of
yeah.
ignored or seen as like a weaker film when actually me and you, when we look at the MCU, especially we're watching it lately, I think this is one of the strongest entries in the MCU period going back. And that is the 2008 film, The Incredible Hulk, which, I mean, even in the year it came out, got buried because Iron Man came out that year along with The Dark Knight. So if you go back to 2008 for superhero movies, you get two of the greatest ones of all time. And this one kind of came in at the tail end. But we just wanted to talk about this one. Mike and I have been working our way through some of the older Marvel films, and this one we just never feel gets its shine. And recently we watched it separately, kind of like, hey, let's talk about this thing. So I'll kick it to you first, Mike. 2008, Incredible Hulk. You got Ed Norton, start of the MCU. What do you enjoy about the film? How do you see it overall with so much time passed since it came out?
You kind of if you're like me, you almost kind of forgot about it because it was done and it was I believe it was a success when it came out.
Instantly
And
so. Didn't make a ton of movie, but again, you go back to 2008. We're talking superhero movies. We're not breaking a billion back then.
right,
Yeah.
right, we're not breaking a billion yet, but you can kind of see the ladder to which all these movies kind of came together. The Dark Knight came out that year. And it was really one of the vanguard movies on the ramp up to what would become the MCU. And it was really cool to see it again. Kind of tried to remember because it's probably been 10 years since I've seen it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe I had it on DVD at one point, but it was just it was fun to watch. I like Ed Norton, and of course, he played a great Bruce Banner, and I like the way they handled the origin story. Of course, because you and I both love the Ang Lee.
Yeah. 2003, the Bono one. Yeah.
Yeah, the Bonham one was good too, and so they kind of creatively at the beginning credits they kind of do the origin story so you get up to speed if you don't know how.
Only kind of had at the end of the 2003 one where he's in the jungle like of Brazil or almost somewhere. Right?
And
They
he's
had them
like,
in South America. I don't know if he was in Brazil. And so this
yeah,
picks up. He's kind of in that same area. You very easily could see where there was a loose reboot or some sort of connective tissue to it, which was kind of cool because again, back then we didn't really have this whole built out multiverse of MCU films and
who
phases and all that stuff.
who knew where it was going to go? But you can definitely see that they had things in mind. And but yeah, I thought the CGI held up pretty well. Very strong performances from what's her name, Liv Tyler,
Tyler, yeah.
and Ed Norton, and who's the guy that plays
William
Thunderbolt?
Hurt for Thunderbolt Ross, yeah.
William Hurd. Yeah, he did good as well. And it was fun to watch it again. Very much an action packed. It kind of was riding that line between the guy's action war movie and the superhero
A little
movie.
bit of a
It's still
romance intrigue thing.
in a little bit of romance, so there was a little bit of like, which lane are we going to pick? Because you got to remember, in 2008, superhero movies weren't really a thing. Certainly, when they were making it, they were probably filming at the same time as Batman and Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie, but none of
Yeah.
those had been released to any success or acclaim. So here's this movie trying to find its middle road, but I think they balanced all those elements really well. And yeah, I love the CGI Hulk. I
Yeah.
just think it's cool.
I'm always stunned when I go back and watch the early MCU films. We've talked about Iron Man on the channel before. When you go back and watch that movie for 2008, you're talking 16. And I always think, oh, that was a decade ago. No, it was like 16 years ago. And you look and it's weird. These movies look better than the stuff Marvel makes now, which is
Oh yeah,
insane considering the budget's significantly lower. And I think the cool thing is you could tell that Marvel at this point I think because they didn't have the budget, they were a little more creative with the use of CGI, and it just looked a little bit better. And I think watching this movie, where I'm so impressed with all of the first phase of Marvel, but in particular this one, this to me is almost a definitive kind of Hulk movie. I think for me as a Hulk fan, or at least my version of the Hulk, it captured everything I wanted it to. Bruce Banner is a noble man. He is heroic. He is terrified of what the Hulk is. And I love that element. I hated the Mark Ruffalo piece of the Hulk being kind of a joke or this, dabbing and stuff like that in restaurants. It was stupid. I love that it's a genuinely terrifying thing when the Hulk shows up. I think one of the coolest scenes in that film, obviously at the end when they go to attack the Abomination, and he's like, I don't know if I can control it, but I can probably aim it. It's something, and
Yeah,
that's the Hulk. I think what makes the Hulk so great as a character and where I've always liked him in Marvel comics is it's the one hero where it's like you wouldn't want to be the Hulk at all.
yeah.
This is a terrifying thing for this person, and I love even the small hints like the PTSD kind of thing that he has, where he takes a shower and like the shower head turns into the machine gun barrel because he's kind of
Right.
picking up slight memories of the Hulk. I just think overall they did so many elements of the Hulk well. I also liked a lot of the hints with the Bill Bixby stuff. I think you had really cool cameo from Ferrigno in the movie as a security guard. You
And
got
then
obviously
the soundtrack when he's walking down the road, they played the soundtrack from the original Hulk TV show, and
no, and you kind of get
Stan had a
that
cameo in it.
homeless drifter sort of thing.
Yeah,
Goes into this town in Brazil. That girl's getting kind of harassed by those guys, and he takes care of the issue for her. It captured so much of what I love about the Incredible Hulk, where he's kind of just this good man who has this horrible thing happen to him, and he literally just tries to do the best he can with it. And I think to me, the strength of this film is Edward Norton, and I think the MCU. I know he's notoriously difficult to work with, apparently, but man, I go back because of how much I think Ruffalo fell off the wheel. The rails came off with Ruffalo. Um, I wish we could have seen what the MCU would have looked like for Hulk with Edward Norton, because apparently he was let go because he was very included in the script and had a lot of things he wanted to include. And what's interesting is you can tell this was a good character piece. This was not a dumb CGI action fest movie. This was really a character movie about Bruce Banner and his life, and I thought that was really good. Well, did Edward Norton kind of stand out to you? I mean, I know we like Bana a lot, but compared to like Ruffalo and them, how does Ed Norton stand out to you?
I will say, in Ruffalo's defense, the material he was given to work with.
Yeah, that's yeah,
So let's just
for
let's
sure.
just start there. But yeah, it was really great how you put an actor with some heavy chops like he has in a role like that, he's going to bite down and deliver, and he did. And for in taking a risk, because you got to understand, like I don't know. I mean, you just got to think back to 2006, 2007 mindset when this movie would have gotten greenlit, and you could tell he was a real Hulk fan for him to sign on board a big talent like that.
Well, especially because he's one of those more auteur kind of actors where he typically does the Oscar bait type of films. He's not exactly his career's taken a huge fall since, but back then, I mean, he was a guy who was doing serious drama films and things like that. He'd occasionally have some, commercial kind of movie that would come out, but superhero movies, like you said, I think that's the hardest part with some of these older films is we go back now and we look through the full spectrum of what the MCU was. Like you said, when this was being filmed, there is no critical acclaim for Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. There is no successful Robert Downey Jr. Back here, you look at Affleck, Daredevil killed his career, hurt it badly. Catwoman for Halle Berry really hurt her career. Jennifer Garner being Elektra really hurt her career. I mean, there were so many people who were in these superhero films, and if it went wrong, I mean, it could really derail your career as an actor. And
Yeah.
so that someone like Norton signed up for it, and you can tell he was really passionate about it. It made me when I rewatch it now, it made me envious of that time of when superhero movies used to have that kind of feel to it, where you could tell the early portion of Marvel, you had people who really cared.
Oh
This
yeah,
wasn't a platform. This wasn't like oh, I can put a message in the movie. It was, no, we want to make a Hulk movie and just
yeah.
be excellent at that. And I thought that was really, really cool throughout. I think some other underrated pieces to this. I think, again, one of the things you and I have talked about the MCU, the love story elements of movies. We've talked about how it's not necessarily the most popular part of superhero comic books, but it is that emotional tether that connects you to that character and makes them human. And the Betty Ross relationship that they build with Hulk throughout this film, you kind of feel his heartbreak when he goes back in town and she's sort of moved on,
Yeah.
with Dr. Sampson, and you kind of see how much that hurts him. And again, it's just that brilliant piece of character empathy and making you care. I think Liv Tyler in the movie actually really does give a good performance as Betty
She
from it.
did.
Probably not as good as Jennifer Connelly in the original one, but she was a really good character throughout. And I think I'm always impressed when I go back and watch these things because you realize like when she's talking to the Hulk in those scenes where she's like in the cave with him and everything, she's just staring at nothing. Like she's not
Right.
actually with anything in there. And I think she did a really good job portraying that, not only the relationship with Bruce, but like the dynamic with her dad in the film. I thought they did really good, and that sort of stood out to me as I watched the film. Um, we go through Thunderbolt Ross, kind of the main, not main, the main villain, but our sort of main antagonist, at least for the first half of the film. I was surprised because I always thought William Hurt was kind of good in the role. I was surprised that this was like the extended one that he had because I forget he had little cameos throughout the MCU. I forgot how good he was in this movie as Thunderbolt Ross. I thought he really captured the comic book character well. Well, what did you think about Thunderbolt Ross when you watched the film?
Oh yeah. I mean, you just the thing about portraying a villain, you have to make the audience really hate you, and and you really hated him. You know,
Yeah.
you were like, how can you do this to your daughter? And you know, he delivered a really good performance. So you had four really strong actors, and I'm sorry I've forgotten the British actor's name, but who played the Abomination.
Tim Roth, I think. Yeah.
Tim Roth, yeah. And they all did really well. Tim Roth played his part exceptionally well as the villain, and there
Mhm.
was never a point in the movie where I was like, "Oh, that wouldn't happen." That doesn't ring true. There was never a part in the movie where it was like that, and you just
Mhm.
have to wonder. I don't know who wrote it. I know Feige had his hands in it. He was there to help produce it, but it really felt like a good Hulk movie. And if you love the Hulk, you know you'll like that movie. I I don't. If you haven't seen it, watch it and then let us know in the comments below if you're a true Green Hulk fan.
Yeah. No, so one thing I was watching this is, when I go back and see some of these films, and I don't argue this is a perfect movie. I think there's some pacing issues with it, and it does drag on a little bit. I just think overall, as a Hulk movie, what was so great is the few action sequences you get of him. That factory scene where he just rips apart
Yeah,
everybody. The scene within the park in Virginia where the military comes at him, and you just see him unleashed. The fight scene with the Abomination. I mean, when he takes the cop car and smashes it in half and uses them as boxing gloves and
that was
punches the
great,
Abomination through the
wasn't it?
street, you're like, that to me, that was the coolest thing about this film is whoever made the Hulk sequences got it. Like this savage beast of a character. And I think what was cool was the 2003 film, while we both love it, there's very little Hulk in that movie because obviously there's that great action sequence in the desert and stuff like that. This was where you finally got to see like indecently good CGI, a full extended Hulk action scene. And man, it was so cool to see him tussle with the Abomination and tear through. I think the only weak point for me, the character design of the Abomination was a little weird, but I think overall it was it's such a fun Hulk film. And I think it's just, as I go back and watch a movie like this, I miss the time when Marvel used to cast actors who were really good actors to play
And
these roles, and they took it seriously and had fun. There wasn't like a joke every 5 minutes undercutting everything.
And I would challenge the viewers at this stage of the superhero movie genre extravaganza that has been the last 20 years, to go back in time There's a little bit of nostalgia there, and just kind of rewatch these with fresh eyes. Try not to put on you know, the glasses of today, and just kind of go back to where you were and enjoy them for what they were. Because there's a lot of gems back there, and they were dealing with much less technology, smaller budgets, and the actors had to deliver their performances for us to get a good movie. And you know, a lot of them succeeded in that, and this movie is one of those.
No, it's a really good watch if you go back. I think the saddest part of rewatching it for me, there were so many breadcrumbs that you could tell they were actually setting up some major things for the Hulk. I think that's
Yeah,
the part that, the clear setup of the leader, where they have Samuel Stearns get hit and the stuff lands on his head, and
yeah.
you kind of see that. You could tell that was probably going somewhere. Having Doc Samson established in the film, a major character from the comics, that was probably supposed to go somewhere,
And
and it just all got dropped.
you can kind of see Marvel if you put on your 2007 2008 glasses, like, okay, we got Robert Downey Jr. to play Iron Man, and he did great. And let's get Ed Norton to play the Hulk, and we'll find somebody to play Thor. You can kind of see them kind of thinking that way. And you know, and then the formula was starting to come together, because you had, you know, your cameos with Lou Ferrigno. So you had those little Easter eggs there, and then Stan with drinking the cola.
Yeah,
Um,
great Stanley cameo,
and then
absolutely.
at the end, you know, they brought Robert Downey Jr. in to meet up with Bruce, and he says, "I'm putting together a team," and he's like, "What kind of team?" And so you could
Yeah.
just kind of see their vision, but it all anchored around, you know, these first few movies. They had to be successful, and when Ed Norton decided to not sign on for another one, I
It's
think,
always I don't know if Norton was fired or if they didn't sign him on. I mean, that's the weirdest thing for me is it kind of feels like in this movie, the Hulk seemed like he was supposed to be a major player
oh
in the
yeah,
MCU, and that just maybe it was the box office results of this because I think it made about half of what Iron Man did, or maybe a third of what Iron Man did. Maybe the box office results made them think, hey, the Hulk's not a character folks are interested in anymore. It's just weird because you can tell the end credit scene where Tony goes in and meets Thunderbolt Ross. It seemed like they were hinting that the Hulk would probably be very similar to like the villain, maybe of the first Avengers villain, or at least an antagonist of the first
yeah,
Avengers film. The leader was set up. You had Doc Samson's get set up. It just seemed like there were so many things they were setting up for the Hulk, and then Edward Norton departed, and it kind of just seemed like, okay, we'll just make the Hulk the same as Hawkeye or Black Widow, where he's in the Avengers, he's there, he's just not a major character anymore. And that's the saddest part of going back and watching this is it really felt like from I think Louis Leterrier, the director, and Edward Norton, and I'm sure the folks involved, this felt like a love letter to Hulk fans. This felt like we're going to capture the essence of the comics, the savagery of the character and the fights. We're going to get a good Betty relationship, a really good Thunderbolt Ross. We're going to put one of his biggest villains in the Abomination, so you get the cool action scenes. We're also going to honor the TV show. I was so impressed rewatching it after it had been some time of how much this movie seemed to be a movie like if you like any iteration of the Hulk, we want to give you something that pays homage to what was there. And it was really cool, man. I go back now and I think we did a ranking, and we'll have to re-rank our MCU films at some point. I know we did that. Like that was one of our first couple of videos on the channel. There's been
yeah.
so many more. This would be a lot higher up there for me in the MCU than it used to be in that. I used to like it. I watched this and I was telling my wife, I was watching, my wife sat down and watched it with me. And that's when I knew it was a good movie. My wife was superhero films. She'll kind of go in and out. She started watching about 10 minutes in, and then she sat down and watched the rest of the movie with me. And it's just because
Nice.
the through line of the character and how much you care about the stakes for him, and just even small stuff they have where he goes to that little Stan's guy, the guy who runs the pizza shop,
Yeah,
and just that little human connection and moments that are there that serve the greater story. And I wish we could get back to a time where we did invest more in the story, a little less in the action, and that this movie's chock full of action, but none of
yeah.
it feels gratuitous or unnecessary. And I'll say the other standout sequence for me, that chase scene where Norton is in Brazil and he's just running from the army before he turns into the Hulk,
That was
and how
cool,
well
right?
that was structured and how they handled the heartbeat and all that stuff. it just you could tell there was a ton of thought that went into so much of this film. And man, yeah, like you said, I'd be really interested to hear from Hulk fans as far as I'm sure when it came out, because we're comic book fans, we're always more brutal on these things when they first come out. Typically, especially as comic book fans, because the general audience will normally be a little kinder to stuff than comic book fans because we come out with such a sharp and critical eye most of the time on
Right.
these films. I'd be really interested for Hulk fans if you've gone back and watched this one. Like, what do you think of it now? Right, because this has always been seen as like the stepchild of the MCU kind of thing. It's one of the only ones that wasn't on Disney Plus for a long time. I'd be really curious to know what people think about it now. But I'd have
Me
to say,
too.
man, this might be one of the 5 or 10 best MCU films when I rewatch it. It is such a good character study, and as someone who loves the Hulk, man, it's cool. I wish we had gotten more Ed Norton as the Hulk. I think that's the big carryover that I have for this is, man, I wish we'd gotten more Edward Norton.
I
But
know.
unfortunately, one of those, I guess maybe somewhere in the Marvel multiverse there is a timeline where he stayed as the Hulk, and we got a sequel where the leader came in. I guess we're seeing some of the threads of this. I believe. Well, Thunderbolt William Hurt's passed away, so we do know Thunderbolt Ross is coming back, but Harrison Ford is playing him in the new Captain America film. I think Liv Tyler's supposed to be in that. And I believe the guy who plays the leader is in that as well. So it seems like they took a lot of these, but obviously being with the MCU is now, instead of making that a Hulk film, that's a Sam Wilson Captain America film instead. We'll see how that goes. But let us know what you guys think. Do you think, like us, that this is an underappreciated kind of comic book film? If you've revisited it, what did you think? And especially if you're a Hulk fan. If you're a
Yeah.
Hulk fan, what do you think about this film? I don't know, Mike. Last thing we'll close it here. This one or the 2003 one? If you had to pick the Ang Lee or this one, where would you lean if you had to just kind of gut check, make you pick one? Which one would you go with?
Um, I don't know. I think the Ang Lee one has a special place in my heart because it was the first iteration of it,
Yeah,
and I just thought it was so well done and directed, and the actors weren't as famous as Marvel tried to do later, and they still put out a great movie. I kind of like the style of the Ang Lee a little bit better because it was a little more subdued,
yeah.
whereas this one was more of a guy's action flick mixed in with superhero stuff and a little couple of drops of romance. It was a perfect formula for what was about to become the MCU, but I still love the
You'd still
Ang
go
Lee.
2003.
Yeah,
You know, it's tough in that I was thinking about that all before we were doing the video, and I was like, it's almost I wish there was an amalgamation of the two to make the perfect film. And
right.
that I do love the 2003 film for how many of the quieter moments there are and how much they just let the character development go on. And I think the deeper message of like the trauma that Bruce inflicted was it had
Yeah,
inflicted on him. Um, but man, I was just really stunned watching this how much I liked Edward Norton as Bruce Banner. I think that was it's really close. I think I would take the original supporting cast. I think Sam Elliott's probably a little better Thunderbolt Ross. Jennifer Connelly's a little bit better as Betty, but they're both really good. And that's the thing that's crazy to me is the Hulk for all the junk that kind of gets thrown at the Hulk as a character. I gotta say, if I sat down and talked about the 10 or 15 best superhero films ever, I don't know. This one and the 2003 one might be up there for me, especially
yeah,
because of how much they seem to care about the actual character.
yeah, and they're both kind of, you know, not even in the discussion, which is weird. People heavily deride that first 2003 movie, and
Oh yeah.
I don't know why.
Well,
I
I
don't know.
think that one kind of falls under Spider-Man had come out the year before and
Yeah,
had established this very fun. And so I think for most folks, I remember going to see the 2003 one, and I was expecting like, oh, it's gonna be the Hulk with Spider-Man kind of thing. So it's gonna be like fun, and then it's a very serious character drama. And so I think for the general audience, it probably hit different. I imagine both of these movies. I think the crazy thing is both of these movies, if they released later, I think would have been massive successes.
yeah,
I
and
guess if I had to pick one, I would probably still go with the '03 one. But man,
yeah,
I really, really like both. I think they're both really good
I know. And for a character who's been completely marginalized, he had
in the movie
two
space for sure.
he had two separate films that were really good that were put out. in the early 2000s, and it's just kind of mind-boggling that you know, here
He's
was
been subdued down to a side character in a She-Hulk TV show at this point. It's
yeah,
crazy.
it's kind of unfortunate. But you could tell that, the creators were serious about both those independent movie attempts, and they really delivered a good job. I really want to hear from the Hulk fans, like, what of those two movies, what is your favorite? Did you love them? Did you hate them?
Or
We'd never
if
let us.
you're a Ruffalo fan who thinks Ruffalo's
Yes,
I would say I think Edward Norton's probably the best Bruce Banner, Bond a second, and then I'd have Ruffalo way below. But
but how would
again,
you
like you
rank them?
said, a lot of that is the material given to Ruffalo. But
Yeah,
we'll see for sure. Let us know what you guys think. I think we're both just hoping we get another Hulk film. I hope we could at some point get another Hulk kind of solo ventures and not a side character, not a joke character in Thor film, an actual Hulk film proper would be interesting. As always, folks, let us know what you guys think below. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
thanks everybody.